Yes, how much is your case worth? That's the title of today's video. Stand by as we get ready to get started talking today about how much is your case worth. And now we're going to show you my fancy ticker tape graphic as it comes across the screen so you know exactly what it is we'll be talking about today. Today's topic is, here we go, how much is your case worth? You want to know how much? How much do you think your case is worth? How much is your case worth? That's right. We're talking about personal injury cases. We're talking about medical malpractice cases. We're talking about wrongful death cases. And now you see my fancy three-dimensional graphic. Notice it's on a fancy piece of paper, printed out in two colors. Fancy, three-dimensional. Nobody has this ticker tape. Here we go. This ticker tape is better than anyone you see on CNN. On MSNBC, So stand by as we get ready to get started. We're going to be talking about something really interesting, something that's fascinating, something that's going to give you a great understanding of how these types of cases work, especially here in New York. So we're going to get started in just a minute. And now, if you're joining me, put a comment below. Let me know that you're here. Say hi. Ask questions. Because remember, today we're talking about how much is your case worth. And now, here's my fancy ticker tape once again. As we get ready to get started, leave a comment below. Let me know that you're here. Say hello. Ask questions. Don't forget to ask questions because I'm positive that you're going to have questions as I begin talking about this topic today, which is how much is your case worth, which is a topic that comes up all the time with every single injured victim. They always want to know, how much is my case worth? And I'm going to share with you exactly the answer to that question. So we're just about ready to get started. It's a beautiful day today here in Great Neck, and now the weather is really cooperating, even though we got a lot of sun right overhead. Today we're talking about how much is your case worth. Hello everybody, I'm Gerry Oginski. I'm a New York medical malpractice and personal injury attorney. So today I want to answer the question, how much is your case worth? Because everybody who suffers an injury as a result of someone else's carelessness always wants to know, okay, if I bring a lawsuit, how much is my case worth? How much compensation can I get? How much money can I get as a form of compensation for all the harms, the losses, and injuries that I suffered because of someone else's carelessness? Maybe you were a passenger in a car that got hit. Maybe you were a patient who went to a doctor and their treatment was careless. That caused you significant harm and injury. And so now you have no choice but to bring a lawsuit against the offending, the careless party, the negligent person who caused you harm. And now your entire goal is to try and obtain money as compensation. So you really want to know, okay, if I go through the whole legal process, the whole litigation process, how much is my case worth? How much can I expect to get as a result of all the injuries that I suffered, as a result of the harm that I suffered, as a result of being unable to work? Well, let me ask you that question. No, let me change that around. Let me answer that question. Because before I can answer that question, you should know that there are a number of questions that I need to ask. So let's begin with the questions that I need to ask. I need to ask, where did this happen? I need to know what venue this is. Where in the state of New York, for example, which is where I practice, where within the state did this happen? Was it in Brooklyn, in the Bronx, in Queens, Manhattan? Staten Island, where? I need to know exactly where because that is an important component. Number two, I need to know when it happened. I need to know whether or not your matter is timely. I need to understand whether or not you are still within the time frame in which you have to bring a lawsuit for the injuries that you suffered. So that's known as the statute of limitations. So in addition to knowing where this happened, I need to know whether or not your matter is timely. So what else do I need to know? I need to know how your injuries have affected you on a daily basis. In other words, what is it that you can't do? Hey, Rob, how much is my case worth, or how much am I going to receive? That's exactly right. That's exactly the topic today. How much is your case worth? And now I'm trying to show and explain to people and help them understand what we go through to analyze and determine what a particular case is worth. So I'll give you a great example. I got a call yesterday from a former client of mine who told me that her husband suffered some type of injury. I think it was a car accident, and she begged him to come to me. But for whatever reason, he said, you know what? My friend has this attorney. He does these car accident cases a lot, and now I want to go to him. So he went to this other attorney. The litigation was going on for 2 years, and now he received the settlement offer as the case got closer to trial. And she calls me up. She's frantic. And she says, Gerry, you have to help me. I said, what's the problem? And she tells me the story about her husband going to this other attorney. I said, okay, that's fine. And now here's the problem. The problem was that after all this litigation and after her husband suffering some tremendous injuries, now he's getting a lowball settlement offer from the insurance company. And the attorney tells him, listen, you're no spring chicken, meaning that you're pretty old, and you're not going to likely get, that doesn't make much sense. You're not likely going to get a significant amount of money by settlement or even by verdict. And she wanted to know from me how much her husband's case was worth. Very, very important question. Here's what I told her. I said, I would love to be on the telephone with you and tell you, okay, your husband's case is worth $500,000. I would love to say that your husband's case is worth $200,000. I would love to tell you that your husband's case is worth $5 million. And then I said, you know what? That wouldn't be fair, because I wouldn't be giving you an educated answer about the true value of your husband's case. You want to know why? For a number of key reasons. Number one, I don't know where this is taking place. Number two, I don't know how much insurance coverage there is. Because if there's only $25,000 in insurance coverage, it makes no difference whether your case is worth $5 million. The maximum you're going to get, hey, Jason, nice to see you. We learned so much from you. Keep them coming. Awesome. I'll keep doing that. Thank you. Today's topic is, how much is your case worth? So I got a call yesterday from a former client of mine whose husband went to another attorney for a car accident matter. And now she calls me up frantic and says, hey, Gerry, my husband got a lowball offer of $45,000 and change, and now she wanted to know whether that was appropriate. And I said, I would love to tell you that your case is worth $2 million, $5 million, $10 million, $100,000. And the reality is that I can't, because I'm at a significant disadvantage. I'm at a disadvantage because I don't know where your case took place. I don't know the type of impact that he had, whether he was a driver or a passenger. I don't know whether he contributed to his own injuries. Maybe he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Maybe he was a driver and went through a red light. I don't know those facts because I'm not familiar with the details of his case. I don't know what specific injuries he suffered at the scene of the accident. Very important. I don't know what type of pain that he endured as a result of this impact. I don't know for how long he was in the hospital and received medical care and treatment. I don't know what type of physical therapy and rehabilitation he required after the accident. I don't know whether he had surgery that incapacitated him even further and subjected him to more risks of further medical injury. I don't know that. And so I didn't have the opportunity to learn all this in a 5-minute phone call. I said, in order to truly understand exactly what your husband's case is worth, what your case is worth, I truly need to understand all this information and more. Well, wait, there's more. There's always more, right? So then I continued. I said, listen, I also need to know, what do his doctors say about his ongoing care and treatment that he will require into the future? For how many years into the future will he require this? What is his age now? I learned he's in his late 60s. Okay? Was he working before? Is he able to work now? Why can't he work? All of these questions are designed to learn information to help me understand the type of injuries, the type of disabilities, the type of incapacity that he has, so that I can better understand and formulate an idea of how much your case is worth. So this is going to help me. And I start asking these questions, and she doesn't have the answers. So now I tell her there's even more questions that I need to ask. So what kind of questions are those? Questions involving, what activities can he no longer do today that he was able to do before? What is it that he can't do today that he used to be able to do before? How much income has he lost as a result of these injuries? What is it in the future? Had he not been injured, how much longer would he have continued earning money? Was there any type of lien by any medical expenses paid by Medicare or Medicaid? I didn't know that information, nor did she. And why does that matter? It matters because that will affect how much money he can ultimately get in his own pocket after all expenses are repaid to the attorney to prosecute the case, after Medicare and Medicaid get repaid for the money that they spent to go ahead and pay for his medical bills. Plus, I haven't done a jury verdict search to see what other similar cases have gone for settlement purposes and also for verdict in the particular venue where he has brought his case. So all of these things are very critical and very important. One other thing I want to mention. Is he supporting anyone financially? This is also important. Does he have a spouse? Did the spouse come and help him? What did you do? I understand that he has a spouse because you are my former client. That's what I was telling her. So I said, listen, I have to ask what it was that you did to help him, because you may have your own separate claim for loss of services. Legally, we call that a loss of consortium claim. And so now if you had to give up various activities, various jobs to go ahead and help out your husband, now you may have your own value for your part of the claim. So all of these questions are designed to try and identify the different factors that we need to know about to determine how much is your case worth. So even though my former client was looking to say, for me, to tell her, listen, your husband's case is worth $500,000 and they're only offering $45,000, so don't take it, go to trial. I said, here's the other problem. The other problem is that your attorney is in the best position because he's been with him for years now throughout the litigation process. He understands all of these questions. Hopefully he knows the answers to all of those questions. You now have to weigh the risk of going to trial and the risk of gambling. When I go like this, it's as if I have dice in my hand and I'm throwing the dice on the on the craps table. Okay, you take a risk every time you go to trial because how much your case is worth, if you cannot resolve this case in a settlement, pre-trial or during the course of trial, well, guess what? Now you're going to have to ask 6 members of the community in New York. We have 6 jurors who are going to decide this case, decide whether you are more likely right than wrong, that what you are claiming is true. And if you are, then they have to decide how much money you are to receive as compensation. And there are various elements of what we call damages to decide how much money you actually walk away with. Or I should say how much money they are going to give you. Does not mean you walk away with that money, and I'll explain that in a moment. So, what happens next? So now you have to consider, what is your risk tolerance? So let's say in this example with my former client that her husband is now offered $45,000 to settle the case. What is your attorney's recommendation about whether or not to accept that money or risk going to trial? His recommendation is actually going to be very important to understand. And assuming he's experienced and has knowledge and experience trying these cases in the venue where this case is pending, guess what? Then you have to rely on your attorney to tell you whether or not this, in his opinion, in his experience, is a good offer. If it's not, what you are doing then is now you are saying, hey, I want to go to trial. I want to see what's behind door number 2. I want the jury to come back and tell me what this case is worth. Well, what that means is that you are gambling. The defense is gambling. You now have become gamblers in Las Vegas. You have become gamblers in Atlantic City. And what that means is when you go to trial, nobody knows what your case is worth. You can have all your testimony, you can have all your evidence, you can have every single documented piece of proof showing that you lost money, showing that you were disabled, showing that all of these problems resulted because of someone else's carelessness. And you know what? A jury may come back and give you less than what the defense has offered. In which case, you're going to be devastated, and then you'll ask the question, how much is your case worth? You're going to be frustrated and say, wait a second, my case is worth millions. The jury gave me $25,000. How is that possible? And that's a risk that you take when you go to trial. Hang on one second as I take a quick water break. All right. So, on the other hand, when you go to trial, we don't ask the jury how much is your case worth. Instead, we try and get the maximum amount of money for you from the jury for various elements of damages, such as the pain and the suffering that you endured from the time of the wrongdoing until the time of trial, and from the time of trial into the foreseeable future. All of those things the jury will have to consider to decide whether or not or how much you are to receive as compensation. But guess what? The jury can come back and decide, you know what? And by the way, the jury does not know, and they will not be told, how much money the defense has offered you to try and settle this case before going to trial and before taking a verdict. They're never told that information. So they don't know what offer you have received. So the jury may come back and feel bad for you. The jury may come back and agree with you 100%. And in fact, the jury may agree with your attorney that your case is worth $5 million. Okay? Now, how do you think the defense is going to feel knowing that they offered $45,000, you rejected it, and now the jury says that they're on the hook for $5 million? Well, if that happens, the very first thing that the defense lawyer will do is he's going to ask the judge to immediately reduce the verdict. Actually, that's not true. He's immediately going to ask the judge to throw out your verdict. He's going to say, Judge, wait a second, this is ridiculous. There's no evidence to support this $5 million verdict. None. So I ask the court to please throw this verdict out. He's going to say that this verdict is against the weight of the evidence. The judge will either have to make a decision right then and there to decide whether or not he agrees. And if he doesn't, he's going to tell the attorneys, listen, I want you to submit papers so that I can read them over and make a legal ruling within a certain period of time, and then I will decide whether or not to throw the verdict out. The defense attorney, not being happy with that answer, will likely turn around and says, Judge, listen, if you don't throw the verdict out because it's not against the weight of the evidence, then we ask you to drastically reduce the amount that this injured victim should be entitled to. So when we ask the question, how much is your case worth? Now, it's in the hands of the judge. Even though a jury may have decided that you are legally entitled to receive $5 million, guess what? There may be an issue because there may not be sufficient insurance coverage to pay even a fraction of that amount of money. And then the judge has to decide, is that number that you received, that the jury says you are entitled to receive, is that number appropriate? And if the judge comes to the conclusion that no, it is not appropriate, next thing you know, he's cutting that verdict down, and it might be cut down so dramatically, and he may say, listen, I think that this case only has a valid, let me go back here. The judge may say, I think this case is only worth maybe $100,000, maybe $50,000, maybe $10,000. It could be anything. Okay? It's all based upon precedent, what other cases have similarly resolved for by verdict, and then the judge will come to a decision. And based upon that decision, one side or the other is now going to appeal. Because if the judge says, okay, your case is worth only $100,000 now, guess what? Now your attorney will likely turn around and appeal. Why? Because the jury has said you're entitled to receive $5 million. He's not going to be happy knowing that the judge has cut it down to only $100,000 or $50,000 because he just determined that your case is worth a tiny fraction of what the jury said it was worth. So, let's go back to the title of this video. What's your case worth? Well, first, what it's worth is whatever the insurance company is willing to pay. That's number one. If they're not willing to pay, or if there is not enough insurance coverage to pay for your damages, to pay for your suffering and your pain, then it's whatever a jury determines it's going to be. And even then, that's not the real value of your case, because then it will be up to the judge to determine whether or not the evidence supports that verdict. And then, once the judge comes down with a ruling, it will then be up to an appeals court to either confirm, deny, or throw out, or start your case all over again to determine the true value of how much your case is really worth. So when I ask the question at the beginning, how much your case is worth, you're expecting me to come out and tell you, okay, I've listened to you for half an hour, tell me the answers to my questions, and now you think that I am going to turn around and give you an immediate answer. I'm going to tell you, okay, your case is worth $1 million. The reality is that, especially on the very first visit, there is no possible way, none whatsoever, that I can give you an educated answer about the true value of your case. Impossible. It's because I'm missing so much information. And without that important information, it becomes impossible to give you any semblance of a real educated answer on how much your case is really worth. So let me go back again to my former client who was on the phone with me. So I said, listen, I would love to help you understand what the value of your husband's case is, but I don't know any of the details. And because of that, I'm at a distinct disadvantage. And even if I did know those details, I'm still at a disadvantage because there's so much more information I need to know. I need to know whether the defense is still willing to increase their offer, or is that their final number? You know, like on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, where they say, is this your final number? Is this the final one? Is it your final offer? And is this your final decision? So all of those questions will help me better understand whether or not the amount that's being offered is appropriate, what the likelihood is of you obtaining more money through settlement negotiations, what the potential is for getting more money as we get closer to trial, or when we start picking a jury, whether or not the value of your case will increase, whether the defense is ready to try your case when the judge has told us to be ready, because if they're not, that may increase the value of your case because now we can put leverage on them. And if they're not ready to try it, the judge can put pressure on the defense that if they don't, he's going to do all sorts of things that could negatively impact their case. So there are many, many factors to answering the question, how much is your case worth? And if you want to know why your case is worth only $250,000 compared to your neighbor who got $500,000 for a similar injury, well, that's a topic for another day. But as of today, today's video, we talked about how much is your case worth? You know, I realize you're watching this video because it showed up on your Facebook feed as a Facebook Live video. And hopefully you found this interesting. Hopefully you found it entertaining. Hopefully you found it educational. That will give you a better sense of how much your case is worth and how an attorney begins to analyze the true value of your particular case. On the other hand, if you're watching this on YouTube on a replay because you're searching for information about your matter, and your matter did happen here in New York, and you have not started a lawsuit yet, but still have questions because your questions have not yet been answered, then what I invite you to do is pick up the phone and call me. You know, I can answer questions just like yours, and I do that every single day. You can reach me, okay? Follow the bouncing finger. Ready? 516-487, here we go, 8207, or by email at Gerry, where are we? Here we go. At Gerry, Gerry, at Oginski-law.com. Well, that's it for today's video. I'm Gerry Oginski. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Bye-bye.